Welcome to Horticulture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture.
Welcome again, constant listeners. This, once again, is not Alexis this week. This is Ray filling in for one of our constant show hosts. Alexis and Brett are off doing big things again this week. So it's the Jessica and Ray show
the Jessica
currently.
and Ray show.
Yeah, it is, with another short form kind of podcast show for the holidays. So what do we got going on this week, Jessica?
Right. Well, we're into December now, so I think we should start to get a little festive. So I have thought of a question for us to start off today.
You do have a question.
I do have a question to start off. What is your favorite holiday movie? Like, what's the one that you like, of all things, you have to watch? I think I have two maybe that I always have to watch, but you go ahead. Tell me which of the ones.
I was watching one today. It's actually a cartoon, but I mean, first of all, there's a bunch. So this makes me anxious.
I have a big list.
I do have a big list, but Frosty the Snowman, I was watching it today during our, doing some stuff. Yeah, I was watching Frosty the Snowman, but there's so many good ones to choose from. But I think that's one of my earliest memories, is watching that as a kid. And there was a point in there that made me very interested. It was the greenhouse, and I believe there was poinsettias in the greenhouse.
Yes.
And
you say that? Yeah.
That had an early horticulture influence on me. I was
look
like,
at you. It's all connecting.
They're growing plants and Frosty, and it's cold. How are they doing that? I remember thinking this as like, I don't know, an 8 or 9 year old. I remember Frosty distinctly. So I'm going to have to go with the OG Frosty. So,
oh man, you had like a really good answer.
I know that you've got probably a list too. So are you just going to pick one?
Oh,
Your favorite?
I guess I'll have to just try to narrow it down. I always have to watch when I'm wrapping Christmas gifts on a fire department night. So I'm like home alone so I can wrap everyone's Christmas gifts. White Christmas.
Oh gosh. That is, Jennifer and I didn't start watching that movie until about 4 or 5 years ago. We did not know about that movie. We watched it once, and we watched it that first year like 4 times.
It's so good.
And now we watch it every year since. I mean, love that movie.
I think the one that I always have to make a point to watch, and there's so many, like you said, right?
Yes,
so many great ones. But I love Christmas Vacation. It makes me laugh every time.
It's got to be my top.
It can always make me laugh.
Were you part of the group that during an office staff, you guys drew? Wait a minute. I'm painting a picture for you since we don't have video podcast listeners. Jessica's office, we had hey, your office does a Christmas theme. We come to office staff. They're trying to make Christmas staff fun as it can be for a work meeting. But Jessica's office does this thing with a Christmas Vacation. Jessica, I'll let you describe it because it was pretty perfect.
The theme that year was to dress up as a holiday movie of some sort. And my office is all female. And we dressed up as characters from Christmas Vacation. So I was Clark Griswold, and I had the vest and
the whole thing.
So I had a whole big ball of really tangled up Christmas lights. I can't think of the aunt's name now, but the aunt who brings the cat. So we had a package that had a toy in it that shook and it sounded like a cat. We made Jello mold with cat food in it. We had
Eddie was
cousin
there.
Eddie. Yeah, one of my coworkers.
So perfect. Cousin Eddie, I still laugh about that. Yeah. Yes. Still laugh about that.
But we did the whole. We tried to do every character in the movie for that competition. We went hard for it.
That is one I probably watch every year. I mean, it's a funny movie, but it hits me a little different now that I have a son. It hits me way different now when Clark's in the attic and he's watching the old family movies. Yeah. I'm like, it hits different people. I was like, whoa, this is a little different now for me. But it's such a great movie. So many classic lines in that movie.
From the dinner scene on, you could just watch that part. And
yes,
it's just.
funny. The hits just keep coming with that. But yeah, there's so many. I mean, I like some of the non-traditional ones, like Four Christmases or The Holiday, or ones Love Actually. There's some that some people wouldn't consider like a traditional Christmas music, but or movie. But yeah, there's so many great Christmas shows out there.
Grinch and Rudolph and all of those too. So.
Yeah. There's just basically I just try to rotate through and watch as many as I can. They're always going on in the background at the house. Absolutely.
But speaking of these, we see Christmas trees and all of them at that time of year,
Oh gosh,
horticultural
yeah.
crop, right? Wreaths. Ray and I were just talking about how we have wreath making classes coming up for the holidays, poinsettias, all sorts of things. And another popular holiday plant is it gets labeled as the holiday cactus, or you might call it the Christmas cactus or the Thanksgiving cactus. And there's even an Easter cactus, which I think a lot of people are very surprised to see or hear about that there's an Easter
Different
one as
plants?
well.
Are they different plants? Is that what we're
They're
talking about?
all the same. They're all holiday
Mhm.
cactuses, but just
Yeah,
different kind of like varieties of them,
gotcha.
different types.
They are slightly
Um,
different then. Yeah, they're not
yes.
exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, most of the time when you're purchasing a holiday cactus, you're really getting a Thanksgiving cactus. So,
Mhm.
but they just get marketed that way. And then especially if you're getting one that's red later on, that may get, has red flowers, might get labeled as a Christmas cactus. But the Christmas cactus and the Thanksgiving cactus and the Easter cactus all have different shaped leaves, right? So they're like cousins
Mhm.
of each other. Um, but there is a difference between the 3. But most of the time, what you're gonna see at the stores that are easy to get are those Thanksgiving cactuses that just get labeled now as, like, holiday cactus, because they're
Mhm.
probably one of the more reliable ones to get to bloom again.
What's their
Uh,
natural bloom period if you don't, like, take special care? When do they, on average, bloom roughly? I
so
mean, Thanksgiving cactus. You
Yeah,
said
so
Thanksgiving? Okay.
anywhere between, like, Thanksgiving and through Christmas.
Somewheres in there. Yeah. Yeah.
They're a short day plant, as we say,
Mhm.
so they're buds and it's flowering and initiated by, like, those longer nights.
Mhm.
However, it can be initiated by temperature fluctuation, and that is what I depend on because I do not have time to take these plants, and give them, like, so many hours of bright light during the day and then cover them up for so many hours of darkness and then remember to pull them out at the right time,
I
right?
messed mine up with supplemental light. I remember messing mine up. This explains a lot, Jessica, because I'm not I haven't grown these type of cactus a lot, but I put grow lights at 12 hours on everything. And I
Mhm.
think I was messing mine up, to be honest. This
Yeah. A little
explains a
too
lot
much.
what you're saying. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and where do you have yours? You said temperature fluctuation. Where do you
So,
like have
I just
yours?
have mine near a window. They like bright and direct light because
Mhm.
these cat when we say cactuses, they are a cactus, but they're actually from Brazil. That's where they grow naturally. They're like in more a mountainous, a jungle area, so they get a lot of filtered light, a lot of bright indirect light. They like they like more moisture than we think a regular cactus does, so they like to be watered on a more regular basis as long as
Mhm.
they have really good drainage
Yeah.
because they are plants that are I'd always say this wrong, epithetic plants. How do you say that? Like, kind of like an orchid where they
Like
kinda
the
hang on.
epiphytic or
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have a trouble saying that.
where
Kinda like an
they
amaryllis then, kinda they're from Brazil, and they love
yeah.
water, but it's a catch-22. They really like water, but they love to be well drained as well.
Yes, because
Yeah.
they can rot very quickly, those
Yeah,
guys.
so it's kinda
Both of
that
these
kinda deal.
plants, yeah. So, they like that bright indirect light, they don't want a lot of direct light, but where they're in the mountain areas, they get those cooler temperatures to initiate bud formation, so it doesn't get cold there, right? So it's not gonna survive
Mhm.
outside depending where you're listening from in the winter, but that temperature change, that'll initiate buds on your holiday cactus as well to get them to bloom. Um, One of the biggest problems most people talk to me about, they're like, "Well, I had buds and then they all fell off. Like, what happened?"
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? Well, the biggest culprit to that is just probably, well, we say stress or, not watering enough or temperature change, like bringing it into a really hot house and having those buds change. But mine at home are just next to a window where they get that bright and direct light and that temperature change
I was
just
gonna say
naturally.
they get a temperature change from the window too, I bet a little bit, don't
Mhm.
they? A little
Yeah,
bit.
and that
Awesome, yeah.
so I currently have a bunch of them that are blooming now, and then the other cool thing about these, is where they could be, like, kind of like family heirloom plants.
Mhm.
So, I have one currently that is a piece of my great-grandmother's
Oh,
that
wow.
she had. So my grandma still has it, and then she gave me a piece. They're very easy to propagate. There's all these very you can read online and different extension pubs, very specific steps of like cutting them, doing rooting hormones, all these things, or you can stick them in a base of water and then,
And they'll root,
give them, yeah,
okay.
give them some bright light and they will root and you
So
can
they root
repot
pretty
them.
easy then,
They root
Christmas
pretty
cactus do,
easy.
okay,
Yeah.
or cactus, these kind of
Um,
cactus.
yeah, these type of cactuses do. So pretty easy to get, to rebloom. Now, the Easter one that I mentioned, I, of all places, had never seen one at, like, a commercial greenhouse, any place like that. I walk into Walmart, and there they are, just in an aisle in Walmart one day, and of
Just
course,
randomly.
yeah, so, of course, what do? I call Alexis, and I say, "You won't believe what's here. There are Easter cactuses here. How many do you want?" Right? And so,
And so she
um,
wanted all of them. She's
she
probably
wanted
like, "Give
all of
me
them,
all."
and then I bought the rest, and, but their flower looks a little more different than, the regular Thanksgiving, holiday, Christmas ones. Their flower looks, I would say, more like a traditional cactus flower or more that
Mhm.
daisy shape,
Same
and
color, or was it a different color? Do you remember?
so far, I can only found, well, the one I have is light pink,
Gotcha. Yeah, I've seen
versus
those
there's
before.
been a lot of breeding done with the other ones. So you have like the red, white, pink, I have a yellow orange one that I found, which is kinda cool because you really don't see that yellow orange, more
Yeah, no, I haven't.
purple colors, but the Easter one, it blooms in the spring around Easter,
Mhm.
and it has more of those traditional cactus flowers. But just like these guys, like, I think a lot of times people get like, "Oh, how am I gonna get to bloom again?" But that temperature change,
Like, does
uh
it naturally?
does it naturally, and sometimes I'll have, bloom, like, in the summer and stuff, and I think it's just, like, with the air conditioning kicking on, won't be as big as or full blooms as we have, like, this time of year, but, you'll get a bloom here and there every once in a while from
So
them.
that dark period and that in combination with the cool, that and I'm sure if you wanted to, like, scientifically manipulate that, you could hone that down, but it sounds like for you, you've got a winning combination naturally with how you
Yeah.
just have them there in the window, and it seems like this is, the holiday cactus. I was talking to somebody and they've had one of these, like, and it's huge, was like a 60-year-old cactus. So,
Mhm.
I mean, the thing was massive, and I've seen pictures of ones over 75 years old, and I didn't realize these things could be this old. It was
Yeah.
amazing that they live like a long, long time if you have just a great environment and they're well taken care of and cared
Yeah.
for. Yeah, that's
They,
awesome.
like I said, they really appreciate, like, well-drained soil, so they like to be watered just like your regular houseplants do. They're gonna appreciate some regular fertilizer, like a complete fertilizer. You might wanna hold off on fertilizing once we get into,
Yeah,
like, September or so and cut back on it, because that's gonna help your buds,
yeah,
stay on there and stuff longer. But then, you can start fertilizing it, and they're not one that needs to be repotted every year. You can go, like, 4 to 5 years, and most of the times they don't need to be repotted unless, they're getting too big for the pot, right?
yeah,
So,
just kinda root
or
bound or whatever.
yeah, or if you notice they're starting to, like, shrivel or other signs of kinda stress on them, they don't really need to be repotted that often. So they're pretty easy, and a lot of people also have success with moving them outside during the summer, like, on a shady porch, so they're getting
Mhm.
some of that bright, maybe they get some direct sun in the morning, but then they're gonna be, like, shaded the rest of the afternoon, and leaving them
D
out there for those natural cooling
Mhm.
temperatures, and then, like, bringing them in, like, they'll already start to set buds, and then bringing them in before those real cold temperatures get, and then they're good to go for
These things are
flowering.
sounding a lot to me like, amaryllis, or,
Yeah.
hypestrium. I guess we call a lot
Mhm.
of plants amaryllis, but the hypestriums, which are what we call, that you'll find in your local box store, we call amaryllis. But the hypestriums are just like that. They like that kind of soil, like a cactus mix soil that's got a little bit more sand, well drained. It's the day length that initiates certain growth patterns with them. They sound, but then again, they're from roughly the same area, and they grow
Yeah.
in the same area. So, and they like morning sun, afternoon shade. They like bright indirect sunlight. So, and that's one that I saw in our local store here in Bourbon County today. That was absolutely beautiful. It was an hypestrium. It was, of course, labeled as an amaryllis, which is fine, but it was one that they were forcing to bloom for Christmas, but it was a
Mhm.
double bloom one, absolutely gorgeous, and I hadn't noticed that before, and it's one of those you mentioned that you had, like, family plants, like a holiday
Mhm.
cactus in your family. Well, in my family, it would be, a Barbados lily, which is an episterum, plant, but that's been in, my wife's side of the family for years, but I'm
Oh, that's
starting to
cool.
notice those. Yeah, it's one of the orange ones that's really cool, and we give it to everybody, so, one of these days, Jessica, I'm just gonna bring you some because everybody
Oh,
gets
I'll
some.
take it.
I
Yeah.
love growing those things, but it's amazing. Plants over the holidays are just so much fun. I mean, and you've talked about like one of the most common things we get questions on. It seems like people just work and work to get these holiday cactus to bloom at a certain time, but it sounds like from what you're saying, just let nature be nature and kind of
Yep.
dictate the temperature and day length and sort of takes care of itself.
Yeah, they take care they're a lot easier than I think people think. Like, I always talk about, like, "Okay, you wanna be real technical, here's all the steps," and then at
Yes.
the end of it, I go, "Or you can just let, you know, nature do
Yeah.
its thing with the temperature change, and you'll probably get some buzz." And it's growers, more commercial growers who are wanting these things to bloom
Yes.
exactly at
And
Thanksgiving,
they
exactly at
really
Christmas.
control it, don't they? Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they're
really.
controlling it.
And the amaryllis grows do that too. It's 8 weeks of dark cycle, and then it's 6 to 8 weeks after you bring them out of an 8-week dark cycle, they bloom, and that's how they it's very controlled. And
Mhm.
if you wanna do that, that's fine, but, naturally, a lot of these plants will bloom, at their given time when you just let kinda nature take its course, sounds
Yeah.
like. So, yeah.
I've the one amaryllis that I, like, tried to overwinter once before, it ended up just becoming like an Easter amaryllis, and that was fine. It,
And
like, it was
they'll
so
bloom at
delayed.
they'll
It
bloom at
finally
odd
bloomed.
times,
Yeah.
and when you bring them out, they're gonna bloom usually 8 weeks later. When you bring them out and pot them, 'em, they're gonna bloom 8 weeks later. It's just what
Yeah.
they do. But now you've got me thinking about, like, all the plants around the holidays, and, if you're like me, a lot of horticulture agents here in Kentucky, like, we have wreath making workshops, and I love that. That's a very festive time, and there's nothing more than I love than the pine smell during a wreath making
Mhm.
workshop with all the resins going. Now, I don't like the stickiness when
Right.
if I'm using something that's very aromatic, like a white pine, and my gloves are sticking together
Yep.
and I'm having a real bad time. But it's almost all worth it for the smell of a natural wreath. That's something that we do every year. It's a lot of fun. That's more greenery than a plant because obviously we've harvested that. But I don't have a natural Christmas tree anymore. That's like an admission of guilt for me. So I'm
Oh,
gonna tell you that and hoping nobody tracks me down. But you guys do like the natural Christmas tree or anything,
we
Jessica?
do. My
Do
husband
you?
always
Okay.
had one, like, growing up, so
Yeah.
we do one for sure, and, my boys get pretty excited about it. They're
Do you keep
always
them out of drinking the water?
Yeah, well,
Like
my
the
biggest
pets and
issue
everything?
was, like, my cat used to get in the water. She
Oh,
just
yeah.
liked water and would, like, play in it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, as long as you don't let it get too hot and you make sure to
Yeah.
water, and you don't need to do any of those mixtures like you'll hear about sometimes where people,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
put, like, bleach and stuff in their water, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just make sure that you give it a fresh cut and give it plenty of water, and it'll last you the whole holiday season. Now, only one time we had to, like, throw our tree out really quickly, and I thought at first, I was like, "Man, this is a sappy tree." Okay, and I was like, "There's, like, sap on my plant on my presents, and, like, what is going on? It's, like, stick to my floor?"
Uh-huh.
So we make it through Christmas, and then I'm like, "What? This it should not be the sap anymore," and then I get in there, giant conifer aphids.
Oh,
It was
so
filled with giant conifer aphids
they were just
that
causing that rain
and
of
when you,
sap
like
down?
if you all look those up afterwards, you see where people think they have Christmas trees that are infested with ticks because
Uh,
these aphids are so big that people think they're ticks.
and of
So
course, you
that
being an
was
entomologist would know that right off
yeah,
and be like,
yeah,
"Oh, I have conifer
and of
aphids."
course, I,
Yeah.
like, took pictures of it to write an article about later, but, I had to, like, wash most of my Christmas ornaments because they were sticky, and that's, like, one of the only times that our, like, fresh tree did not last us the full season because we were like, "Well, this has to go." Um,
Not gonna
and
work.
yeah, we have to get this out of the house, but luckily, they only feed on conifers, so I didn't
Yeah,
have to
so
worry about them jumping to any of my houseplants, but, Sometimes there can be surprises in your live
We used to
trees.
cut, like, cedar trees, which, by the way, don't make the best Christmas trees because 'cause
A
they're
little pokey.
flimsy. They're pokey, the limbs just are very pliable, and you hook an ornament to them. But we used to have a lot of cedars on the farm I grew up on. Us boys love going out, we'd cut a cedar tree, but we had lots of surprises. We would bring that in, there would be little spiders waking up everywhere,
Mhm.
there'd be locust pods trying to hatch, like, all this craziness we would bring in, but lots of wildlife in those trees when you bring in a
Yeah.
because cedar trees are kind of dense and there's like all kinds of critters coming out of that. But now we were just cutting those just out in the woods, kind of in its natural form. And we used to love to do that with my older brother and I when we were younger. We would
Yeah.
do that. But now, once again, cedar trees, at least the ones that were untrimmed, unkept, they just didn't make that. But my mother put up with us, and she would
Mhm.
let us put up those trees, and it looked like a Charlie Brown tree because it'd be all droopy. One ornament would just wreck the tree. And so we
Oh.
had all these heavy ornaments on the end of the limbs, and they would be drooping down. But I'm trying to think, usually if you go to a Christmas tree farm or cut your own at a Christmas tree farm, they grow, I guess, Jessica, what specific species that are more suitable for hanging ornaments and things like
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I always heard is, like, the Fraser fir is the Cadillac
Yeah.
of Christmas
Like
trees.
it's the premier Christmas tree.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they're definitely hard to grow here in Kentucky, like,
Hmm.
they don't like our environment so much versus, like,
Yeah.
North Carolina, you see them everywhere because they're just very happy to grow
Yeah,
there.
we've said it before, folks. Kentucky is challenging for any kind of evergreen. We're not north, we're not south. We're in what's called a transition zone, which means we get the best and worst of both north and south. And evergreens don't like that because typically you see evergreens farther south or farther north, and they're adapted to both north and south, but not in between.
Not
We're
here.
not the best state, but I mean, there we do have Christmas tree farms
We
in
do.
Kentucky. But boy, you have to be. I'm going to pick up greenery tomorrow for my wreath workshop, so there are farms out there that have microclimates or they found species that work
Yeah,
well for their
certain
operation. So
varieties that work
yeah.
better and are still able to grow them, and so you're able to go it just might not be that, Fraser fir, but
Yes.
still different options so you can go and out and cut your own tree and get by, help a local farmer out
Yeah.
and, still have that fresh cut tree.
I love the smell of that, and I do remember that when, we used to do a natural tree, we would always like, now we're guilty of, like, the 1st week in November, we're putting up a tree, which
Yeah.
currently is an artificial tree, um, but when we used to have natural trees, we would wait just a little bit longer because I know the colder it gets, the lower the humidity goes in your home, and that, makes your tree dry out, and certain species of trees just start dropping needles like crazy,
Mhm.
especially if you didn't cut it yourself and it may have been cut 2 or 3 weeks before that and packaged up and made ready for you if it wasn't a local Christmas tree farm. I mean, so there's a lot of factors there, but I do remember us waiting just a little bit longer if we had a real Christmas tree to try to make sure that the trees were, would stay fresh all the way through Christmas. Not all the needles would drop off. But that's all considerations that we had to make for those real Christmas trees. But you said there's no special additives or anything needed typically.
No, yeah,
And
just making
yeah,
sure that you,
yeah,
consistently water them, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
you'll know because, like, you stay consistent with it at first, then all because I know, like, my mom would say, "Oh, but, you'd have to get down there and move presents and try to water," but if you stay consistent with that first week or so, you'll notice, like, the amount of water they start to uptake slows down, right?
yeah,
So you're
yeah.
not really having to water as much if give them plenty
Yeah,
at
they
the
slowly start to
beginning.
plug up and they just
Yep.
don't suck up as much, do they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of some
So
of the other things that just scream Christmas. I'm thinking we mentioned poinsettias right at the beginning of the show,
well, yeah, that's
and
a big
then
one.
yeah, poinsettias are a big one. Any comments on that? Do you guys keep those around the house during Christmas or during the
I
holidays?
usually always get my, like, 1.99 cent one
Yeah.
to put around the house.
Yeah.
That's one that, if you want a challenge to try to get it to well, you shouldn't say
Oh
rebloom
gosh.
because, like,
Yeah.
the color is actually the leaves, the
Yes.
bracts of the plant, and then, like, the actual flower on a poinsettia are those little tiny yellow
Little
things.
bitties. Yeah.
But they're another one of those short day plants that you actually do. You can't cheat with the cool
No.
temperatures.
They're kinda
Uh,
specific, aren't they?
They're kinda specific, and I do know people, like, one of my 4-H agent here at the office, she had a poinsettia that was huge, and she took it outside and planted it in her yard every year,
Oh, wow.
and then it dug it up and brought it in, and where I think it got enough of that natural cooling and
That is
stuff, and
dedication.
it would not completely turn red, but sh some of it would every
That's
year.
still amazing that she was able to keep like, I've never kept, a poinsettia, like, year after year. That's
Yeah.
just something I've never done. Amaryllis all the time, I do that, I keep them year round, but I've never tried that with a poinsettia.
I have a poinsettia currently, and it's kind of like a science experiment I've been
Yeah,
doing kinda
like a
unintentionally.
mad science
Yeah,
experiment, yeah.
it kept doing fine, and so I have it in the same container, and it's just sitting by a window, and it has put on so much growth, and so I just keep watering it, and I'm like, "Well, we'll see what it does." I don't think it'll change color, I will be shocked if it does, but, we'll see what happens with it, but poinsettias are, like, if you ever look into the history of them, are pretty cool to look up to see what, like, the original poinsettia looked like, because it has the tiniest little leaves or bracts, right? So it doesn't
Mhm.
look anything like what we see today, because 'cause they're originally from, like, Mexico, and,
Yeah.
I believe it was I think it's John Poinsett, his last name was Poinsett, who first saw them growing as shrubs, the US ambassador to Mexico, and then brought them back to the United States and obviously named them poinsettias after his last name,
Oh, himself, of
um,
course, yes.
after himself, and but you can look up those first that variety of, like, what he saw growing naturally as shrubs, and they like, what we think of the flowers, but the bracts, the leaves are extremely thin and very small, compared to what we have now and, like, the variety of colors that we have now. Now,
Oh, yeah.
just keep in mind those blue ones and those glitter ones, they're not
They might have a little
they're
help,
not
is that what you're
natural.
saying? Yeah, maybe some of the cream ones,
Yeah,
yeah, and some of
yeah,
the pinkish ones, and
yeah,
definitely the red one, but, like, all the
and
glitter,
there's,
that's
like
not natural, is it?
yeah, and there's, like, there's some cool ones, like, a variety called, like, peppermint, I think, and it's like a red and white speckled
Yeah, like a variegate,
one,
almost like a variegated one.
yeah, so there's
Yeah.
lots of cool ones that they've done,
Do you have to worry about, like,
breeding over the
kids
years.
and pets around those? I hear that a lot every year.
That's a huge question every year. So, like, um, I think they would have to eat like a, 40-pound or so child would have to eat, like, at least 50 leaves or something
Okay.
to get, like, sick, and I don't know why they would keep eating them because there's that latex inside those leaves that
It's
would
almost like a
instantly
defense mechanism that
Yeah.
makes yeah, very what?
Not
Unpalatable, is that a good way
unpalatable,
to
right?
yeah,
It's
there you go.
and so the same thing with your pets too. I think I read it at one point, it all goes back to, like, a single case of, like, where a child ate some poinsettia leaves and went to the hospital and was sick, but there might have been, like, other things happening too, but the takeaway was the child ate some poinsettia leaves, and so then they instantly got labeled as a toxic plant. Now they are a
Yeah.
toxic plant because they have the latex in them, but
Yes.
there are other houseplants that we are around all the time or plants out in our yard that are way worse
Yeah.
than a poinsettia. So you would have to eat quite a few
Yeah, like a
leaves,
lot, yeah.
yeah, to have some
Well
adverse effects and
in Kentucky, when we're moving in, like, it's not uncommon for people to move in plants for the wintertime that they have on the outside that they're gonna overwinter and grow, and protect through the winter before they move out next spring. And I always encourage people that as they're doing that, especially if you have inquisitive pets, like cats love to go and just sometimes chew on things. Maybe your dog does too, or your toddler. But any of these things,
true.
I encourage people to look up, check the toxicity, especially if it's something new that maybe
Mhm.
a pet or a child may want to explore more so than they normally would, they're not used to, so all of a sudden, there's something pretty and colorful there, so that's why I always
Mhm.
encourage people just to, look this up, and if you can't find the information, call your local extension office. If you're here in Kentucky, there's one in every single county, but call to check, some of the plants like amaryllis, it's on the toxicity list. A lot of our indoor plants are, but if you wanna know more about the nature of the toxicity, call your local extension office because
Mhm.
sometimes pets will explore. If it's something new, they're curious too. They'll go up and maybe nibble on things that they normally wouldn't nibble on. So it's good to check. If you don't know, kind of check it out. Check it
Yeah,
out.
that's a good point.
Yeah, then because in our house, I know there's lots of greenery from I mean, there might be boxwood floating around, there might be cedar, there could be, I don't know, well, you mentioned what, Norfolk pine, that's one that I
Mhm.
guess, a lot of people I don't have a lot of experience with those, but is that something you guys work with in the winter too, during the
That's
holidays, Norfolks?
yes. So they're sold as, like, little Christmas trees, like, as
Yeah,
alternative Christmas trees, and
Charlie
sometimes
Brown
they have
trees.
glitter on them as well.
What is it with glitter
Well,
and
I don't
Christmas? Maybe
know.
it's a magical time. It just enhances
Yeah.
everything. Okay.
But they're a pretty cool like, they naturally are giant trees, like,
Yes.
big
Mhm.
trees, and they naturally are near the ocean, so they like a lot of humidity, they like a sandy soil, right? So they need good drainage, but lots of water at the same time, right, when you think about their
Yeah.
environment, um and they can make a great houseplant. However, they need, like, a lot of bright light, I believe, and the biggest culprit for their decline is we have them inside in the winter when the humidity is not high, and
Yes.
the tips of them will start turning brown, and
Yeah.
slowly that gets them every time. So they almost get treated just like a little temporary plant, just like, the poinsettia. I think most people are just like, "I have this poinsettia for the season, and when it's done, I
They
toss
consider it
it,"
an
right?
annual, yeah, holiday
Yeah,
annual that
it's a
they just
holiday
do away.
annual.
Yeah, that they
I
just
have
toss.
seen some people have Norfolk Island pines that have, like, done really well and
Wow.
have, if you find the right spot for them, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you find a happy spot for them, um, they can grow pretty well and be a nice size, like, little tree in your house. Um, but they're a little challenging, but they're definitely sold a lot this time of year as, like, little
I
small
see
Christmas
'em
trees.
and I wonder about I guess that does make sense. I see them around this time of year, and I've always wondered because I never did have those growing up or haven't
Mhm.
done a lot of programming on those, but I always see them this time of year, and that does make sense as they're kinda like a little, they're greenery for the season.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
really soft too, so
Yeah,
they're
they're
not
not really
like
pokey
yeah,
like a
they're not
cedar, yeah.
pokey. Yeah.
Like a spruce or a cedar, which can get you. But yeah,
Yeah.
they're kinda friendly as far as that goes,
Yeah.
as far as the feel of them. So,
Mhm.
yeah, now that we started talking about this, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, greenery for the holidays, plants for the holidays," even though it's typically colder in Kentucky. It is colder in Kentucky,
Yeah.
around the Christmas season, but yeah, greenery is a big part of it, when I think more and more about it growing up, and not only that, but the plants and everything. Even though it's cold outside, on the inside, there's usually these plants that we have, even things like mistletoe, which it still cracks me up that mistletoe has got this romantic notion from a parasite.
Right?
I'm not going to make any relationship comments on that, but yeah, do you guys have a mistletoe hanging somewhere, Jessica?
I no, I
I
we
haven't for a long
don't.
time. Yeah, we
We
do not.
don't.
Now
But I
there's
know,
a
like
tree outside of our deck, and I look
yeah,
at it, but it's too far up in there. But I see mistletoe growing in that tree.
that's what I was gonna
It's
say, like, I know a tree in, like, my parents' cattle field, and it was an old walnut tree, and there is, mistletoe growing on that because you find it a lot of times on isolated trees more I mean, you can find them mixed with other trees too, but because birds
yeah,
around from the
yeah.
berries and stuff.
That's how they spread around, I guess, birds primarily.
Like you said, it's a parasite to the tree,
Yeah.
but we use it as a sign of love, right? For
Yeah, I don't know what I'm sure there's some interesting history on that. I've not looked it up in a while, but yeah, one of those things. But that's another example of a traditional holiday plant that
Mhm.
you're just trying to bring some festiveness and some life back in. And I guess historically, when things were kind of dreary outside, people would have this greenery on the inside to sort of liven up things, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
plants for the holidays.
yeah, lots of options.
There really is. The more we talked about it, the more I started thinking about things. At first, I was like, "Oh, yeah," and then I was like,
We
"Oh,
did
yeah," and then, "Oh, yeah."
yeah, we didn't even get into, people they force, like, paper whites,
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah, they force them sometimes for the holiday stuff, and
Mhm.
even though I think they're quite smelly, right? Those stink, right?
That's
Don't
one
they?
I never grew. No,
Yeah,
no. I
so
never involved myself in.
but yeah, lots of other ones we're not even thinking of, that get
Oh, yeah.
marketed as holiday ones. So
Yeah, I tend to move in. Like I said, I've got pots of amaryllis currently everywhere. As I have like it's called St. Francis ivy, but it's just some sort of miniature ivy. What else do I have sitting under grow lights now? Pothos. I have. I don't know, some snake plants. I'm just got curly leaf jade. That's one I've been
Mhm.
growing here lately. I've been having a lot of fun with that, but I have to bring it in. It did fantastic with afternoons, indirect sun. Done
Yeah.
really good. Christmas cactuses. I haven't had one of those in a while, but yeah. What do you have growing else besides the plants we've talked about? Like any
Yeah,
other plants hiding in the windowsills?
yeah, I have some shamrock that's
Oh yeah, that's a
going.
good one.
I have a fiddle leaf fig
Oh,
that's
fun,
really
fun.
taken off
Figs
and
are
is
fun.
happy. Trying to think what else. I have a caletheia plant that I absolutely
Hmm.
love. It's a rattlesnake caletheia. So,
Yeah,
like, the underside is purple, and then the top is, like, a light green with dark green spots.
yeah, really pretty.
And I have found a spot for it, which I will never move it from that spot ever, and I'm gonna knock on wood because it is very happy there, and I know sometimes they can be a little finicky, so I shall never move it 'cause it it is very
It's like
happy
at
where
the
it's at. Yeah, it likes
and
where it
yeah,
is.
they're in the perfect spot, like, they get just the right amount of light with the angle or the location, and they're happy with the temperature. When I
Mhm.
find one of it's funny, I do that with my, the Barbados lilies that I have. I found the perfect spot on the front porch. It's perfect. I mean, we almost lost the plant to, like, mealybugs, a few years ago, but
Yeah.
then this one spot on my porch is perfect for it, so now I'm kinda superstitious. I take it back to the exact same spot every
Oh,
year, and it's
yeah.
gotten huge. I think
That's
I got
awesome.
50 starts off of it this year, almost 50. It was 40 some odd starts that I taught a class from out of one container.
That's
But yeah,
awesome.
I'm like, okay, it's doing well. I'm not going to mess with it. So yeah, I'm
Um,
exactly the same way when you
my
find those good
s
locations.
son had a moment, this past week because, we hadn't had, like, a really hard frost or freeze here yet, and
No,
he
we've
picked
got
out
blooms still.
yeah, he picked out a coleus plant this past summer, and it was,
Mhm.
like, one of those, like, green and purple, like,
That was that
funky ones.
monster coleus, wasn't
And
it? Big
yeah,
one. It was a
and
big one.
so,
Yeah.
like, it got huge, and now it's finally, like, succumbing to just natural, and he's just like, "But I don't understand. Can't we bring it inside?" And we did bring, like, a piece broke off, and we stuck it in a vase of water, and it is, like, growing above our sink, so I'm like, "We have a piece for
Mhm.
next year," but he, like, wants to bring this giant thing
He
inside.
wants he wants that
So
impact of
oh,
that giant plant.
yeah,
Yeah.
but a lemon tree. I do have a lemon tree inside,
Oh, you
so
do? So you've
yeah,
got a lot of fun things on the inside, just in
yes.
front of, like, windows? Do you use,
Just in front of
like, grow
windows,
lights or anything?
I'm fortunate enough I live in an older farmhouse that was built in the 1800s, and it has, like, the really big, large
Oh,
windows,
yeah, big
and
tall windows,
so once we moved there, my plants all got really significantly
like
they're
a mini
much happier,
greenhouse.
much happier compared to where we used to live, just
Yeah.
being around the windows and getting a lot of really bright indirect light. So, um so yeah, so got lots of things to keep going
Plants
through the winter.
Plans for the holidays, and I'm sure we probably missed a bunch. And if you as listeners out there have any suggestions for us that you would like for us to cover this winter, maybe they're not necessarily associated with the holidays, but just plants that you would like to
Yeah,
see us covered. Yeah, we're always kind of open for suggestions on this show. But anything else, Jessica, that you can think of before we wrap it up today? We don't
yeah,
have Alexis to lead us out with all of her
I
standard,
know all of our
exit. Yeah.
yeah, that's like we've been trying to think of, like, all the things that we need to say to remind
Yeah.
you all of, but I think
Yeah.
that's it. I think, just
Yeah.
enjoy the holidays. Go out and get you a holiday plant, gift one
Absolutely.
to
If
someone
you're
you
in
know
a
who likes
Yeah.
plants.
And they do make great gifts, and like I said, I noticed those absolutely stunning double bloom Hyperisteum amaryllises at a local store. Totally, and I'm tempted to go back and buy some of those. The double bloom ones look more like roses than they do
Oh,
amaryllis.
that's
So,
really cool.
yeah, they're going to make really good gifts. So, and they were at a really good price. So, that's a great idea, Jessica. Get someone the gift of plants, and it'll be the gift that keeps giving because they'll come back to you either when they're dead or they need advice to keep it
Right,
growing. So, yeah,
exactly.
and that's a good way to keep a relationship going with your friends and stay close. Is give them plants, and they will come and maybe tell you about their experiences with those
Yes,
plants.
or maybe they'll propagate it, and, it's the gift that keeps on giving that way too, and they can just
Yep.
keep sharing, so
It's kinda like the bread. I forget the bread, friendship bread
yep.
that you kind of take and you start and you get some and then Jessica, pass it on down? Yeah, I love and that's what I do with plants. Somebody gives me some, I'll grow those up to the point to where I then can divide and give those to other people or propagate them somehow. So, yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks, Jessica. Great
Yeah,
discussion
thanks,
today
Ray.
on holiday plants. And we thank you, those of you that are listening today. And if you're listening over the holidays, happy holidays. And we look forward to you joining us again. They'll, Lexus and Brett will be back with us, and they may do a couple of holiday short segments. So kind of be watching for those. But we look forward to you joining us the next time. We will include some show notes on the topics today, along with our contact information and Instagram page. So if you need any of that information, just look in the show notes. But thank you all so very much, and we will see you next time. Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks.